Have you ever asked yourself, am I spending too much time alone? Or maybe the question comes with a heavier feeling, like, why don't I want to talk to anyone anymore? If those thoughts have crossed your mind, you're not alone, and they're worth exploring. As we grow older, life can get complicated. Responsibilities pile up. Social circles change. We might get burned out from constant interaction. Or we simply don't have the energy we once did to keep up with everyone. Maybe we've even been hurt. And now we retreat to protect ourselves. But then a new concern creeps in. Is this solitude helping me? Or is it starting to hurt me? In this video, we're going to talk about a topic that many people silently struggle with: self-isolation. And more specifically, how to tell when being alone is healthy and when it's not. This isn't about judging yourself or feeling guilty for needing space. It's about becoming more aware, so you can make choices that support your mental and emotional well-being. 2. Normalizing and contextualizing. Let's start with this. Wanting to be alone is not a bad thing. It's completely normal, even necessary, to need solitude sometimes. Being alone allows us to recharge, reflect, and reconnect with ourselves. For introverts, solitude is the space where they thrive. For creatives and deep thinkers, alone time is where their best ideas are born. So if you've found comfort in being by yourself, that's not strange. It's human. In fact, a 2021 study from the Journal of Adolescence found that moderate solitude, when chosen intentionally, was linked to increased self-esteem and emotional regulation in teens and young adults. The key word there is intentional. When we choose solitude as a way to rest or reflect, it can be deeply healthy. But when we isolate to avoid discomfort, fear, or emotional pain, the story starts to change. Here's what often gets confusing. Isolation can sneak up on you. It's not always dramatic. It can look like slowly replying to fewer texts, canceling plans, or finding yourself constantly saying, "Maybe next time," and it might not feel like a problem at first. That's why this conversation is so important. Everyone isolates at some point in their lives. It doesn't mean you're broken or weak, but it does mean you should be aware, because unchecked isolation can quietly lead to deeper mental health challenges. 3. When it becomes too much. So how do you know if your solitude has become unhealthy? There isn't a single rule that applies to everyone, but there are some red flags that can help you reflect. Here are a few questions you can ask yourself. Have I been avoiding people or activities that I used to enjoy? Am I declining invitations? Not because I'm busy, but because I just don't feel like facing people? Do I feel anxious, irritable, or overwhelmed when I imagine social interaction? Am I spending whole days without meaningful conversation? Do I find it hard to reach out even when I want to? If some of those hit close to home, that's okay. It's not about diagnosing yourself. It's about checking in honestly. Psychologists often differentiate between solitude and isolation by your emotional state. Solitude is peaceful. It's something you choose. Isolation feels like a trap. It's something that happens to you, or something you feel unable to escape from. One common sign of unhealthy isolation is when it starts to interfere with basic functioning like eating, sleeping, working, or maintaining relationships. You might find yourself scrolling endlessly on your phone not to relax, but to distract yourself from the creeping discomfort of being disconnected. You might avoid making a call because you worry that you won't know what to say, or because it's just too draining. And often, people who isolate too much begin to experience increased levels of anxiety and depression. According to the American Psychological Association, Social isolation is closely linked to a higher risk of emotional distress and even physical health problems, especially when it becomes chronic. You don't have to be physically alone to feel isolated. Sometimes people in crowded households or social settings still feel invisible, misunderstood, or emotionally shut off. That's why understanding how and why you're isolating is more important than simply counting how many people you've seen this week. 4. Root causes and emotional triggers. Now let's go deeper. What's behind the urge to isolate? Sometimes isolation is a defense mechanism. Maybe you've been hurt by a breakup, a betrayal, or even subtle rejections over time. So you retreat. It feels safer that way. Other times, isolation grows from exhaustion. Maybe you're burned out from school, work, or caregiving. Socializing feels like another task on a never-ending list. So you stop making the effort. Not because you don't care, but because you're too drained to try. And then there's mental health. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, and social phobia often cause or worsen isolation. These conditions can make you feel like you're a burden to others, or that no one understands you, so you pull away, even when part of you wants connection. During the COVID-19 pandemic, researchers observed a significant rise in loneliness and isolation, particularly among young adults. But here's what's important to note. Many of those people didn't realize they were struggling until much later. Because isolation, when it's linked to emotional pain, tends to become self-reinforcing. You might isolate because you feel low, but isolation can deepen that low feeling, and so the cycle continues. If this sounds familiar, take a breath. This pattern doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human, and probably hurting in ways you haven't had the space or support to process yet. In the next section, we'll look at how long-term isolation can affect your emotional and physical health, how small habits can quietly reinforce the cycle, and most importantly, what you can do to begin reconnecting, not just with others, but with yourself. 5. Consequences and long-term effects. Let's pick up where we left off, with the emotional feedback loop that isolation often creates. When we isolate for too long, our world begins to shrink, not just in terms of the people we see, but in how we see ourselves. The less we connect with others, the easier it becomes to believe things like, "No one really wants me around anyway. I've been gone too long. It'd be weird to reach out now. I'm better off alone." These thoughts might feel like truths, but more often, they're symptoms of prolonged isolation. Over time, being alone too much can affect not just your mood, but your baseline beliefs about yourself and your worth. Research from the National Institute on Aging shows that chronic social isolation is associated with increased risks of depression, cognitive decline, poor sleep, and even heart disease. Why? Because humans are wired for connection. Even if you're introverted, your brain still benefits from meaningful interaction. And when it doesn't get that, it can begin to malfunction in small, subtle ways. Imagine you go a week without speaking to someone you trust. Then 2 weeks. Then a month. Eventually, your emotional muscles, the ones that help you navigate conversations, express your feelings, or reach out for help, start to weaken. And just like physical muscles, they don't work the same without regular use. It becomes harder to know what to say. You might second-guess everything. Suddenly, sending a simple text like, "Hey, how have you been?" feels overwhelming. This shrinking of your emotional world doesn't happen all at once. It happens in quiet, tiny moments. Choosing not to wave at a neighbor, ignoring a call, skipping a group chat. Each one feels small, but together They add up. And here's the catch. The longer you isolate, the more disconnected you can feel, not just from others, but from yourself. You stop checking in with your needs. You might not even notice you're sad or anxious anymore. Just numb. That numbness can lead to unhealthy coping habits. Binge watching, excessive sleeping, compulsive phone use, or even substance use. These behaviors aren't evil. They're attempts at relief. But they usually don't fix the root issue. The good news? These patterns can be interrupted, even gently, even slowly. 6. What you can do. So let's talk about how. Reconnecting with others and with yourself doesn't mean you have to become a social butterfly overnight. You don't need to throw yourself into crowds or say yes to every invite. Instead, think of it like rebuilding a muscle. Patiently, one rep at a time. Here are a few small steps that can help. 1. Start with low-pressure connection. You don't need to have a deep conversation right away. Start by sending a quick message to someone you trust. You don't even need a reason. A simple, "Hey, just thinking about you," is enough. That one message can be the crack in the wall you've built. And from there, light can start to get in. 2. Create gentle routines. Isolation often breaks your sense of time and rhythm. Try adding a small routine that brings structure to your day. Why? Like taking a walk every morning, or eating a meal at the same time each day. If you're up for it, take that walk where people are. A park, a bookstore, even just your street. You don't have to talk, just be around life. 3. Check in with your emotions. When you feel the urge to stay in and shut down, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Not to fix it, but to notice. Naming your feelings, loneliness, fear, boredom, gives you power over them. You may even find that what you need isn't isolation, but rest, support, or comfort. 4. Use technology intentionally. It's tempting to scroll mindlessly when you're isolated. Instead, use your phone as a bridge, not a wall. Send a voice note. Comment on a friend's post. Share something funny with someone. These are small touches that bring you back into connection. 5. Practice micro-socializing. Even a 5-second interaction, saying hi to a barista or nodding at a neighbor, can help retrain your brain to feel safe in social spaces again. These little gestures remind your nervous system that people aren't threats. And that you're not invisible. 6. Set goals you can reach. Don't pressure yourself to be normal again. Instead, ask, what's one way I can connect today? Maybe it's replying to that text. Maybe it's journaling about how you feel. Maybe it's just watching a video like this and realizing you're not the only one. And remember, setbacks are part of the process. You might go a few days feeling motivated and then sink back into silence. That doesn't mean you've failed. It just means you're still healing. Give yourself credit for every step forward, even the tiny ones. In the next part of this series, we'll talk more deeply about when isolation may be tied to something larger, like anxiety, depression, or trauma, and how to know when it's time to reach out for professional support. You don't have to wait for things to get bad enough. Help isn't just for crisis, it's for care. 7. When to seek help. By now, you might be reflecting on your own patterns, the times you've withdrawn, the silence you've grown used to, or the habits that have formed in your solitude. Maybe it feels like you've started to lose your sense of connection, not only with others, but with your own sense of joy, purpose, or even identity. And maybe you're wondering something important. Is this something I can work through on my own? Or is it time to ask for help? Here's the truth. Seeking help isn't a sign that you've failed. It's actually a sign that you care, that you're noticing the signals your mind and body are sending, and that you're ready to listen. But let's make it clearer. When is it time to reach out to a therapist or mental health professional? Here are some signs to watch for. 1. You've been isolating for a long time and it's getting worse. If your world has been shrinking for weeks or months, not due to circumstance, but because of emotional exhaustion, anxiety, or numbness, it may be time to talk to someone who can help you untangle that experience. 2. You feel stuck in a loop. Maybe you want to reconnect, but something inside holds you back every time. That hesitation could be rooted in fear, shame, trauma, or depression, and a therapist can help. You gently explore where that block is coming from. 3. You've lost interest in things that used to bring you joy. This is a classic symptom of depression. If your favorite shows, hobbies, or even your relationships no longer spark anything inside you, that's a signal that something deeper may be at play. 4. You're dealing with guilt, shame, or self-criticism. A lot of people who isolate blame themselves. You might think, "I'm just lazy," or "No one wants me around anyway." These are lies depression tells, and they grow stronger in isolation. A therapist can help you challenge those thoughts and reconnect with your true self-worth. 5. You feel emotionally numb or overly sensitive. If everything feels like too much, or nothing feels like anything, that emotional flatness or overwhelm could be your nervous system crying out for support. 6. You feel like your mental health is slipping. Maybe you're not sleeping well, or you're sleeping too much. Maybe your eating habits have changed drastically. Maybe you've begun relying on alcohol, substances, or other behaviors to distract yourself from the loneliness. These are all indicators that your system is out of balance and that it may be time to check in with someone trained to help. And here's the most important point. You don't need a big reason to seek help. You don't have to wait for a breakdown or a crisis. You can go to therapy just because you've been feeling off or lost, or because you want someone to talk to who won't judge you. That alone is enough. Therapy can feel scary at first, especially if you've been isolated for a while. The idea of opening up, being vulnerable, might sound exhausting or even terrifying. But here's a gentle truth. The hardest part is usually the beginning. Once you find the right therapist, the space they create for you can become a safe, steady place to untangle the knots that have built up over time. A place to speak your thoughts out loud and finally feel heard, sometimes for the first time in a long while. If therapy isn't accessible for you right now due to financial, cultural, or location barriers, that doesn't mean you're out of options. There are free or low-cost mental health services, peer support groups, online therapy platforms, and even crisis lines that can offer a place to start. Sometimes, just saying the words "I think I need help" is the moment things begin to change. Recognizing the deeper layers. Let's also acknowledge something else. Sometimes, chronic isolation isn't just about what's happening now. It can be linked to early experiences or past trauma. If you grew up in a home where emotional expression wasn't welcomed, you might have learned to self-soothe through solitude. If you've experienced emotional abuse, betrayal, or bullying, your mind might protect you by withdrawing. If you've been let down repeatedly, you might have developed a belief that no one is really safe. These defense mechanisms are understandable. They served you at one point. Maybe they even kept you emotionally alive. But now, they might be keeping you stuck, Therapists understand these patterns. They can help you make sense of them without shame or blame. They'll meet you where you are and help you figure out what healing looks like for you. Because healing from isolation doesn't mean becoming a completely different person. It means becoming more yourself again, the version of you who can connect, feel, and live with intention and ease. You deserve connection. Here's a simple but powerful truth. You deserve connection. Even if your mind says otherwise, even if you've been quiet for a long time, even if you're afraid people won't understand, there are people who will be patient with your pauses, your stumbles, your moments of silence. People who will see you, not as a problem to fix, but as a person worth knowing. Whether it's a therapist, a support group, a friend, or a community like this one, connection is possible, and you don't have to get there all at once. In the final part of this series, we'll explore how to rebuild connection intentionally, how to move forward without shame, and how to honor both your need for solitude and your need for others. You're doing the work just by watching this. You're already taking steps toward yourself, and that is something to be proud of. If you've made it this far, take a moment to acknowledge that. Seriously, pause and give yourself credit. Reflecting on your mental and emotional habits is not easy. It takes courage to look at your own patterns, especially when they're tied to discomfort, fear, or loneliness. But you did that. You showed up, and that matters. So what now? We've talked about how self-isolation starts, how it can grow, and what signs to look out for. We've also explored the emotional weight it can carry, and how, over time, it can impact our sense of connection, identity, and health. The good news is this: you are not stuck. Isolation may have shaped your habits, but it doesn't define you. And the process of reconnecting doesn't have to be rushed or dramatic. It can start gently from wherever you are. Let's talk about what that might look like in your real life. 1. Honor your need for space, but balance it. Solitude is not the enemy. Sometimes we need to retreat, but isolation becomes harmful when it's used to escape from our emotions or our needs. So check in with yourself regularly. Ask, am I alone because I want peace? Or am I alone because I feel unworthy, tired, or afraid? That question alone can change how you move through your day. 2. Rebuild connection. Slowly, intentionally. Start with people you trust. Maybe you reach out to one friend a week. Maybe you suggest a quick coffee or just send a text. The goal isn't to become super social overnight. The goal is to remember how it feels to connect. Try this. Think of one person right now you feel comfortable around. Not someone you feel you should talk to, but someone you want to. Now ask yourself, what's one small way I could reach out to them this week? Even if it's just a short, "Hi, I miss you." That counts. That matters. 3. Reconnect with yourself. When you've been isolated for a long time, it's not just your social life that suffers. At 3, your relationship with yourself can also grow distant, so take time to rebuild that connection. Start a journal. Take a walk without headphones and just notice how you feel. Create a small ritual. Lighting a candle, making tea, stretching. Something that reminds your body that it's cared for. Ask yourself gently, what do I need today? How can I offer myself a little kindness right now? You are worth your own attention. 4. Make peace with the process. Some days it will feel easy. Other days it won't. You might reach out and feel awkward. You might try and get no reply. You might get tired halfway through a conversation. That's okay. Healing isn't linear. What matters is consistency, not perfection. The more you show up for yourself in small ways, the more you'll trust yourself to keep going, even when it's hard. 5. Let go of shame. You are not lazy or broken for isolating. You're human, and you've been coping the best way you could. Letting people in again isn't weakness. It's resilience. Choosing connection is a sign of hope, even if it's just a flicker right now. Whatever your story is, it's valid. You don't need to compare your journey to anyone else's. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to heal at your own pace. Thank you, truly, for being here, for listening, for reflecting, and for choosing to explore something so deeply personal. That takes more bravery than most people realize. If this topic spoke to you, know that you're not alone. So many others are walking this same road, quietly wondering if they'll ever feel close to others again. And if you've found even one idea or piece of reassurance in this video, I hope you'll hold on to it. Let it be a seed, something to nurture as you begin to reconnect with the world and yourself. If you're comfortable, feel free to share your experience in the comments. You never know who might read your words and feel a little less alone. And if you've ever struggled with isolation and found ways to work through it, your insight could help someone else take their first step. You don't need to be a therapist or an expert to offer encouragement. Sometimes, "I've been there too" is enough. If this video helped you, consider liking and subscribing. It helps us reach more people who might need this kind of support, and lets us know that these conversations matter. Wherever you are in your journey, you're already moving forward just by showing up. We're proud of you, and we're so glad you're here. See you next time.